Hi there and welcome to this, the third video, taking a look at how I build an arm harness. What I'm going to do in this one is figure out how to get from the cooter that we've got so far to one with the lames. Now these haven't been fully sorted out yet, you can see there, got a fair bit of work to do. There's no sliding rivets on the inside, it is just the basic mechanism. So what we're going to do is take a look at how we go from this to this. Obviously to get this one made, I've made a pattern of the lames before, but I'm just going to show how relatively straightforward it is to make a lame pattern. There's a great air of mystery about lames, there doesn't need to be. They're relatively straightforward, and if you get them wrong, just move on quickly and start another one. So we've got our elbow just about squared off there. What I'm going to do is first of all mark a couple of arrows on it. What this will do is help me remember as I'm going which way up I'm working, because I want this to be the right hand one. That's just to help me there. Next, I take an outside measurement, only has to be approximate, from there to the end. That's about 8.5. Now remember, we're going around the outside of the cooter here, so that means that my lame pattern will be larger than I need it to be, which is perfect because I can just trim it down. So I just measure vaguely from just beyond the wing there to the edge there. In this case it's 8.5 inches or about 22 centimeters. Next, take a piece of card, just have this bit lying around, so we use that, and measure off on it the 8.5 inches and find the halfway mark, which in this case is 4.25, and mark that nice and straightforward. Then just mark a line straight up like that there, and while we're doing it, don't have to be too accurate with this one because it's going to be cut straight up there. Now I've looked at the pictures of the harness we're doing. The lames aren't that large on this one, so we'll keep them vaguely like that. Again, we're just using that original from Cherbourg as a guide. I reckon about 5 centimeters or about 2 inches will do us. And on the edge, so I want a bit of spare material, we'll go for around 3 centimeters or so there, just over an inch. Bear with me on this, I'm trying to draw around the camera. But then just take an arc from there to there, something like that, and just stick a little piece on there like that. That's all I do, and then we'll cut that out and get it on the other side. So I've vaguely cut it out now, just fold it in two. And cut out your shape. Now you can be a lot more accurate than I'm being here and really try and figure out the lame. I'm sure they probably would have been in the past because of the price of materials, but that's basically how I make a simple lame. And if we can find the elbow piece, here we are. So we'll start on the top one, just drop that inside, offer it up, and just be sure it covers everywhere. Oop. I'll do that again on camera this time. You can see there, around to there, covers everything up. Now we get that cut out of some steel. So there's what I use as a basic lame. The material I've used for this, now this harness is going to be going for sort of basic reenactment and LARPing and so on, is just mild steel. I used 16 gauge for the cooter and I'm using 18 gauge for the lame, just to keep the weight down a little bit. If you're using high carbon, then you can do your lames as low as 20. I hear some folk doing even 22, but I find 18 gauge in mild steel is more than strong enough. The good thing is if you mess up the lame as you're going, you can throw it in the scrap bin and know that you can cut hinges and things from this strip all ready to go, so I don't need to waste it. And it's one thing I'd state as well, if you are making these lames, it should take you about 20 minutes or so per lame to get going. If you find yourself worrying the lame, trying to get it to fit and so on, just abandon it and cut a new one and crack on there. As long as everything's right on the cooter, then the lame should fit, and if it isn't and the lame's wrong, just abandon it and start again. So something I've mentioned in the past that I like to do with all of my lames and so on, I get a bit twisted in these cases where it's thinner material, is just passing through this. And if you remember, this has got about a 2mm dip or so in the centre here. So I like to just pass it through, even it out, and make sure the surface isn't flat. So I'll do that while the airplane passes overhead. Take your time, don't rush it. Now I've said in the past you don't need to do this. I do it for a lot of material I use, just formed the habit. But for lames, personally I find it's really useful. It puts in a subtle curve throughout the material that later on will marry up quite nicely the more abrupt stuff we're going to do here. So just keep going and keep it nice and smooth throughout. Doing all the time is trying to check from the light that I'm working the whole surface, or more or less all of it. It's this middle bit's going to be worked in the mode, but just keep that going. Keep checking that you're striking it, not leaving flats. If you are going to concentrate on an area more than the middle, it's these ends here. Don't want them too curved that way, otherwise they won't work, but you want a gentle bit of curve in, and then later if it's too much you can tap it back. So just work those areas on the end there. Now it all depends on the size of the lame, where you are in history and so on. But if you look at a lame end on or in profile, it's rarely, if I think ever, completely flat. There's normally a gentle curve in there. Somebody hasn't just bent it into shape. That's where you get those unsightly gaps and so on in the articulations later. So this curve that I've put in there that way at the moment on the stake will just flatten out once I bend this into shape. So what I've got here is just a simple wooden stump that I've got a small divot in there. And what I'm going to do is take this hammer. Now it doesn't have to be a beast like this. All it is I just want something that's curved. Sometimes, depending on what I'm doing, I use this one. A flat hammer doesn't really cut the mustard. You want something rounded so it doesn't mar it. And then we just work from the centre and work out in diminishing circles until we leave the end really alone. Remember, go gently, don't need to smash it. Keep that you are on the centre all the time. Go nice and steady, you don't want a bag of marbles at the end. It should take a gentle planish to lift out once it's done. If you put in big holes here, if you use a ball peen like this, you've got a lot of planishing ahead of your time there, because you're just going to turn that into a bag of marbles. So if you can, find something like this will make it. I'm just walking out, working more now through the centre. I find if anything it's better to go too deep here because you can always flatten it out. I find that easier than part way through returning back here if it isn't deep enough. I feel like I'm going backwards. So again, we've got a little flat here, just want to lift that out. There we go, you can see the shape coming on now. You can really start to see that curve in there. As I move that round, that curve will continue to exist now. And we should be okay there. Right, get that bent round next. So just working now over the horn of the anvil. Anything will do that you can bend it over. I mean, you could use your leg, I suspect. Remember, it's only mild steel, doesn't need a lot of work. What I like to do is just touch these edges over a bit. That's all. Gets them out the way when you're checking the articulations later. If those are flat and rubbing and so on, it becomes a real problem and you might think it's over here and mess things up. Then think now about which way round the armour's going to go, where's the thinner edge of it and so on. And the thinner part of the van brace will be here. So I'll just work it round. Don't go too far. That should do. And then we'll offer it up to the cooter and see where we're at. So here they are, first time together. Let's see where we are. Not bad. Not much movement in there though. At this stage, this is still a bit, if you listen, too wide, particularly on these tips here. Now, the shape in here is ever so slightly that way. So what I'm going to do is bend those two edges in. You can do it on a, just grip it in something or just ever so gently tap it down. That'll widen it. You won't be able to get it in there now. And then just a quick touch in the centre. Now remember, high carbon steel, you're going to have to get this hot to do this probably, depending on what material you've got. And you're using hammers. There you go, it's starting to come together. Still a bit too wide. It's pinging off. So what I'm going to do is I don't really want to change the middle too much, so I'm going to support that and just give it a pinch. If you go too far, it doesn't matter. You notice those arrows now, always, I'm working to those ones on this one. There we go, we're just getting there now. Bit of shaping needing to be done on the cooter. Often reveals itself now. Got a flat in there which we'll have to lift out, no big deal. Right, we're there. So what I'm going to do is mark the point we're on the first hole to go. Generally speaking, we need to tidy this up in there. You see them, they're back a bit from the wing, back a bit from the wing, and down a touch. So about there normally. And just put your thumb on each one and just check they're more or less opposite one another. You don't want it down here, be a disaster. Don't want it like that. Again, it's miles off, or over here. So you can see your articulation is going to pivot all strange. Want it more or less opposite one another, like that. So we're ready for this next part. And what I've done, and pick it up there, is we've got a hole there, drilled. It might be a little bit too high there, but it's no big deal. And one there. Don't want them too close. You don't want to be drilling down here, because don't forget later there's there's a strap got to go in here, and you want to have room for the lames to move and for the strap not to get cut. So that's why I'm not too bothered about him. We'll just make sure that the other one's up there so the aesthetic looks the same. And then when we put the strap in, or the buckle, sorry, on this side, we've got plenty of room either side of the lames. So we take our lame, remember we've got those arrows on here, helping me remember which way round this goes. Find my midpoint, which is about there, vaguely. And put the lame in on its extension. I think some folk do it on the inside movement. I prefer to do it on the outside motion. And mark. Now, I've marked that deliberately. Where are we? Should be able to pick that up in the light. It's too high. As that opens there, what's going to happen with that lame is it's just going to swing out. And this is hooking round quite a lot here, so I'll just straighten that out. I find a big mistake to make with armouring is to get wed to the last process and think it's perfect. If you spot something, sort it out when you see it. There we go, we can bring him back if it's too far later. So there's my original mark, and that's just going to swing out and gap. We don't want that to happen. So we use it as our vague line and just put that back at its full extension and put that front edge in a bit. You can always trim this stuff on the inside off later. What you want is a secure lane with plenty of expansion. We'll make our mark. There we go, and you can see the difference there between the two, I hope, in this light. There, yeah, is our first mark, and there's our second. So I'll drill that out and we'll get it fixed. So I've drilled out the hole there, we've drilled out the hole in the lane. Just hold them together with a nut and bolt. Don't do it up too tight, you want it to move. And also, if you've got any imperfections in these, if they're too hooked or too flat, if you do it up tight as you can, you'll carry that error into the rest of the work. So just give it a quarter turn back. Remember, we're looking for a full extension. Don't worry about these gaps at the minute, we'll sort all that out in a mo. So I want this touching. There we go, there is about its full extension. So what I'm going to do now, I'm happy that this will work once I get it sorted, is I'm going to marry this up. I've got a bit of a flat here, and that's up a bit as well, so I want to touch that down and put a bit more in here. What I'll do is I'll push that out first, and that'll probably pull that down a bit anyway. It's just a little bit flat there. If you can see that on the camera. I just want a bit of a curve in there. So we'll touch that down, offer it back up, and we should be good. So on your round faced hammer, I'm going to lift that out, just give it a gentle touch. That should do us, just pushes that back down, lifts that back up. Check you haven't put a flat in, so we've moved it across here a bit. Just give it a touch back again up there. Job done. See how that goes with the lame now. Now sometimes on jobs like this, the armour gods are with you, and other times you'll be worrying it forever. Let's see how we're doing today. There we go, much better. Forcing that up in there, that's good. We can relax all this down. At the minute I'm holding that quite hard. We can relax it all down once it's in there. Just checking it's not too far away down here. Maybe is a little bit, because it's mild. Pull that towards us. Again, with a carbon steel, it's a slightly different story, and there we are. Make your mark. Now, if this lane was flat and I made that mark, everything's going to go wrong. Flat lanes just hinge. They look awful. They don't do the job they're designed to do. You need to get that curvature in a lane. You can see it's not massive, but it's there. So we'll get this drilled in just a second. So what I'm looking at now is, I can see my markers there. Remember, this is square. So you see that gap is about 7-8 mil. That gap's much bigger. So what that means is as that articulates, it's not going to be square, it's going to be hooked like that, and that'll start to turn your arm outwards, and you'll end up cutting the lame short here, and then when it goes back it'll be like this. It's just a disaster. So best to have a look now, and that's just too short compared to this one, and also you'll probably run into running a gap down here. So offer it back up and do it again. Now, if you're using flat lames, it's the sort of thing you can get away with. You may have guessed, I hate flat lames. It's something that the chap that's taught me, Dave Hewitt at White Rose, to spot, and it wrecks everything, because suddenly you see why often cheaper armours are cheap. It's because this bit here, you'd have probably done all 3 lames if they were flat, and you'd be away already. So learn to hate it and spot it. If you want armour that's actually armour and not an armour shaped object. By the way, if you've not seen Dave's work, go and check him out at White Rose Armories. His stuff is sublime. Beautiful shapes. So there we go. So what we're doing is I'm checking if that's square. Don't worry too much about this shape here at the moment. I'm checking if it's square from that hole to that hole. This all needs sorting out yet. So what I'm doing is, if there was a line from there across to there, I'm checking, does that follow it? Is it equal? It more or less is about there. So I'll get that marked. And we'll check that through. There we go. So we're a bit higher now. More or less matches that, maybe a bit low. So when I put the drill onto it, I'll make that the outer edge of the hole, and we should be okay. Remember, it hasn't taken us long to get here, so if it goes wrong, it's no big deal. Let's put that in a scrap bin. I can flatten it and use it as a hinge later or whatever, and we'll see if that hole's in the right place. So then the big reveal, have we done this right? Remember, I've done my arrows, I was about to offer that up to the wrong one. It's another reason why I only do 1 set of holes at a time, because you just end up in bedlam. And you think, oh, it fitted before, and you've got it on the wrong way up or whatever. So let's get our nut and bolt in there. Always been curious what they would have used in the past. I can't believe they just nailed it every single time and got it right. Also with the aircraft day, you might have guessed I live near an air, or work near an airfield. So let's take a look. No cheating, first time to try this. It's either going to work or I'm going to humiliate myself, but we've got a nice closure-ish there. This I'll all close off and tidy up in a moment. We just want to check that opening. There we go, lovely. A bit tight at the moment, first go. Things like this here will be gripping. That's why on the better lames you tend to find on the originals, what they do is they hook up, come down and hook round, and they take this piece out. You can see that there, because that will bind here and slow the movement down. So it's important that comes out shortly, because otherwise you'll make all the adjustments, then cut it and the thing will fly open. And you can see here, I think just about that's lifted away from there. We need to close that down. That'll be round about there. Check when it's closed that it's not coming beyond the wing. You don't want that to happen either. So we've got to flatten that down and cut that round, cut that, and then marry them up. Now on the end of the anvil here I've got a hole used for holding various tools and bits and pieces, but all it works wonderfully for is for marrying up the nut and bolt in there. So that's not going anywhere now, and then I can just touch that down. Go steady. Remember, you don't need all of this married right down like that. You just want it to about where this line is. And then when I cut that off in a moment, we should have that pretty much as close as we need it to be. So I've cut out those bits that were there and just tidied them up a little bit, make it all nice and smooth in a little bit. That's unimportant at this stage. What I'm going to look at now is how I get rid of this gap. It's horrible. We don't want that gap there. So first thing to do is open it up, get it in a form like this, circle, the dish there that we've had out before, or I've done at the other end. So you sometimes, let's just cut that shape, so you've got a varying shape there. I'll just use the dish for now. What you do is just touch it in. They're not big hits. Any round-faced hammer will do, or stake. Blown out there, so I have to be careful of that. I'm going to bring all of this back down in a moment and see where we're at. I need to touch this over now. So what it's done is it's pushed it too far. Check the nuts and bolts are relatively tight. Yeah, they are. So we don't want that to happen. There's a couple of ways we can stop this. Damaged it there, which we'll push back out in just a moment. So let's see how we stop that from happening. There'll come a point where you go, do you know what, the lame's wrong, but I think this is recoverable. It's just where it's been damaged there. So what I'm going to do now is offer it up to the edge of this stake and bring the edge of the cooter back down. I've got to do this gently throughout the whole movement of the cooter. You don't want just the end to push over. You'll get an unsightly bulge there. What you've got to do is offer it up and just bring it over. We saw earlier that this lame caught nicely on the inside, and it's only since we've married it up a bit over on the wooden stake that it's now blowing past it. So we know that we can make this fit nicely. Just walk that edge over. Don't worry too much about this lame. You can see I'm not doing big hits, I'm trying not to mark the surface of the lame. Give the nut and bolt a little tighten. Don't want them too tight, just tighten them so they touch. Quarter turn back. There we go. Our lame is caught again. And what I want to do is just there, it's been brought back in to the elbow and that just needs touching down again. So, on a reasonably nice hammer, a little ball peen if you can, ever so gently. Touch that back. When you look at some original armour, what you'll do is you'll spot that it gapped somewhere along here. What they've done is they've taken the lame out and beaten it to death and caused a bulge to come up there, like a little knife edge, and that stops it from going. So on the outside it looks nice, on the inside there's this bulge, but it doesn't seem to have bothered them. It won't go near the elbow, you shouldn't be shut in there and getting your skin caught and so on. So we can see there, we've got a nice, just over an inch worth of movement. and a nice tight lame. So what I'm going to do now off camera is I'll repeat the process on this side, and then we'll have a look at how we put lame on lame, but it's more or less the same way of doing things. But I'll get this other lame on off camera, and then we'll do the third lame. So here's our cooter so far. Still a bit of tidying up to do, but the basic mechanics of what we're talking about are done. And you can see there how when you open it, the next lame's in, that goes past 90 degrees, which is perfectly what we're after. When you have the rear brace on here, the van brace coming down here, they'll close better than the human arm can close, which is just what we're after. So what I did was I used the same pattern that we cut before for the other side, and then, to be fair, there's no point in cutting another pattern. This lame's no different. Just offer it up if you want to, just to be certain, and take a look and check that it's okay. Now on the original picture you can see when the arm is extended that this goes a little bit further than this one, so we want to make sure we do something like that. What I'm going to do is I'll trim this back a couple of mil just in the middle there, and then when that's on there, that should come forward just as far, if not a little bit further. If you're desperate to, you can add a bit of meat to this pattern, an extra couple of mil, but I don't see the point, to be honest. We're using the original as something to inspire us, just to move on from. We're not making a facsimile copy. So what I'll do is I'll get that cut and we'll take a look at how we get it fixed, but it's pretty much exactly the same as we got these other two lames working in there. So again, as before, true up the lame on this recess. Want a bit of wood, or however it is you want to get it moving. Again, just putting that slight curve in. On this one I'm going to make sure I've got more curve further in towards the centre, because I'm not going to dish this very much more at all. So I want to make sure we've got a nice bit of curvature in here that's this shallow. We don't want the depth that we had on this one, otherwise the lames will just pull themselves out. Generally, the further away from the joint you go, the less curvature there is in the profile of the lame. If I wanted to put more curve into this lame as I'm working it, just lift it further away from there as you go, and you can see you're dropping more of a curve. Not something you'll do readily with a high carbon steel at all, but with a bit of mild you can get away with it. Yeah, remember, I'm keeping my thumb away from the top there, otherwise it's putting a strain on that joint. Just relax, hold it gently, and just let the rebound off of the anvil face give you the strength you need to move it back down. If you find you're getting a fatigue across this part of the arm, you've probably got your thumb on the top and you're gripping it too hard. There we go, just give that a quick bend here. You see I'm flattening that out. So I'm going to just touch in that centre part there and then get it bent round. So just as before, nice gentle ball peen hammer. And what I'm going to do now is just work really the central part gently. I really don't want to create much more bulge in this profile. Like I say, the further you get from a joint, generally the flatter these lames become. I don't think they ever really become truly flat, but you lift out that curvature. and that's more or less us. So we'll get this bent, we'll offer it up to the other lane, we'll see where we are. So as before, just touch it round, small movements. Don't want to put a crease down here. Right, let's see where we're at. Work out which one it is. Last thing you want to do now is make two left or right vambrace cooters. Remember, that's our top one there. This is for the right arm. So this is our movement we want to put it into. Right around. Much too shallow at the minute. Edges look nice. Just touch that in there and just work that central space down. There we go, just about there now. Lining those up. Don't become a slave to these lines here. You can possibly just about pick out. There we are. Don't become a slave to these lines. They're guides. If it fits really well on a different bit, as long as it's square that way, then you're golden. Right, so we need to lift this out now. Undo that, take it out, and just as before, get everything worked out. But just before you do that, remember when we made our pattern, we made it just a touch longer than it needed to be. So you need to check where the closure is, because if I go sticking the lame here, when I come to cut and true this out, I'm going to be straight through my lame. So you need to think about where that cut is going to lie and come in from it. Otherwise you're just, it's horrible when you do something like that and you have to redo this whole section. See what you have to do there. It's gutting. So make sure you've marked it off, and then we're ready to go. So we'll have a hole in there. We'll put the other one married up based on where this hole is, and then we'll get things sorted. Now, if you remember before, when we were doing this slightly more bent in profile lame in the cooter, we had it fully expanded when we did the holes. What I like to do on the flatter ones is do it on its smallest point. Because it's flatter, it'll just lay flat into this. There's not that danger of walking out. If I put a big curve into this, essentially what I do is I'll just create a giant hinge. What I want to do is just get it more or less where I'd like it to be flat. Don't want it like that. Pull it back from itself a bit. And mark a hole. And expand it. And just see if that hole more or less works. That's looking okay. So that's where I'm going to put my first hole, maybe just up a touch. So we've marked the holes, ready to go. Now this is the side of the lane. Side of the lane that will be under the wing. And it's quite a tight fit here on some of these earlier harnesses with just a little bit of a gap running between the lames and the wing. If I go sticking a bolt through there like I normally do, it's fine whilst we're working it all out, but there won't be the gap needed for that. So a good tip is to grind the head off of a few of these just down to a mil. Put it round so it's facing inside, and that way when you offer this up in a moment, to check that it's all working, you can see there that the rivet can move backwards and forth. So in a moment when we check this again, we don't have to take that out and mess around with it. So all I'm doing now is just checking my fit. You can see there, I want to make sure it's square. So if I have about an inch gap there, I want about an inch gap. Oops, sorry. If I have about an inch gap here, I want to make sure I have about an inch gap there. You can measure it out, be 100% sure, but just train your eye. It's probably for the best. Mark the gap, test it, expanded. I don't like the expansion on that, that wasn't quite enough. So let's give it a mark. Check that closed. I think we're just about there, so I'll put it just in a touch between the two and we'll go from there and see where we end up. Just do it live, see if the armour gods are with me. What I've done is just drilled the hole, tidied that out with the power file. And let's see then, on live telly does it work? Let's have a look. Ooh, might be a bit slack. Perfect. So I'm just going to marry this edge down. You can see a bit of a gap here, don't like that. So we'll just touch that down. So just as before, got this edge, don't like, put it on there, walk it on. Remember, we don't want that just to suddenly flip round, we want it as a nice soft continuation throughout. Getting there. What we'll do is we'll just touch it down quickly here. There we are. A lot of that gap was caused because I went a bit too softly on the profile of that lame. So tighten up our points again. There we go, it's coming together now. Just bring that down. I don't like doing it, but if I think that's a bit too flat, I'll give it another touch on the piece there to bring the curve around. Feeling a little too flat there, to be fair. So what I'll do is I'll just put in a bit more of a dish on that profile. It's important when you make a mistake just to go back to it. Don't try and work around it. If you can see what needs to be done, just get on and do it. Otherwise you'll waste hours on pieces of armour. Now what I don't want to do is put too much curve in on this little bit at the top, otherwise it's just going to walk itself out from the lane. But just here below it in that profile, just there, it really isn't dished very much at all. Now I take a closer look at it, it just needs touching down. Still not as heavy as the first time round, but a bit more. I think I was basically overemphasising the point. Doesn't need to be too curved, but I've made it a bit too flat. But that's still a bit, got a lump there now and a flat, and then the lump, so I just need to marry that across. Nice and gently. There we go. Now obviously that's going to have opened that up, but we've had it in place already once before. So let's check it again. Oh, actually it's not opened it too badly. And now we've got a nice secure fit almost. Just a bit off there. There we go, so we get the screws back in those, and I think those are just about ready for a quick marrying off there, and we're done. So almost to conclude then, you can see we've pretty much got our van brace. It needs tidying up on all these edges and smoothing out and putting in the sliding rivets and so on, and just helping it free up a touch more. But more or less we're done. You can see how it opens smoothly, not much of a gap anywhere, and it goes well past the required movement with the rear brace on. The van brace edition won't really make much more movement on the articulation here because it's going to be riveted in 3 points so that it can move that way. You can see how we've got more than enough movement out of our elbow shape, and it mimics the one that we're copying quite nicely so far, I think. So there you go. It's not quite the great mystery it needs to be. You certainly don't need a degree in geometry or anything like that to be able to make these lame articulations work well. You don't need hundreds of patterns. I'd recommend not cutting everything out straight away. And that's it really. We'll just take a quick look at the tools I've used and what you can do without, although to be fair there's hardly any tools used, so there won't be much to get rid of. So beyond the cutting equipment used to cut the patterns out, the scissors used to cut out the paper pattern. Realistically the only thing I used was a wooden former, which you can make so easily. I'll do a video on those, but they're so simple to do, and if you haven't got the wherewithal to do it, just smash it with a hammer and you'll put that dip in. I use this big old beast, but that's just because I lucked out and found him in a second-hand tool shop, and he had these nice round faces on there. But anything with a round non-marring edge on these corners would do, and I used my trusty normal hammer just for the face there, and that was pretty much it. Electronically, here's my trusty power file, but again that'll work just as well. And I used my cutters, my Makita cutters there, make short work of 18 gauge mild. If you can't afford a pair of those, a pair of these cutters will do, or even a hammer and chisel, but be ready to do a lot of filing, but that'll do, and would have got you there just as easily. So there we go, how to make lames for an arm harness.